Hello and welcome to the Canon podcast, your home on the Star Wars Underworld podcast network for in-depth discussion on the lore of the High Republic and the whole canon of the galaxy far, far away. My name is Matthew, and I am joined across the continent by your friend and mine, Mr. Joel Davis. Joel, how are you doing this week?
Well, been better actually. My body has decided to betray me with back pain, neck pain, pinched nerve, and a cold for a day.
Oh
So
boy, oh boy.
yeah,
So hopefully you'll
no
make it.
fun.
If you see if viewers see you kind of stretching or whatever, that's why he's dancing and
Yes,
he's it's what he's doing anyway.
I'm dancing.
Right on, right on. So this week we are continuing as promised, or as mentioned, with more of our in-depth discussion, picking up on my rant, kind of my rant about imperial attachments a few weeks ago, kind of with Andor, with the attachments episode. We're talking about attachments in the Jedi, in the Empire, in Star Wars as a whole. First, though, I'll get to the plugs at the top. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Ion Cannon Pod. Also Twitch, Ion Cannon, EYEONCANONPOD. If you're listening, of course, right here on the YouTube Star Wars Underworld YouTube page. Watching us on Twitter, how's it going? Watching us on Twitch, how's it going? And then later, I think later tonight, I'll be able to get to this, uploading the audio versions of these episodes on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. And then, speaking of Spotify and Apple Podcasts, pretty much every Friday night is the only time I can actually get to them. I'll try and get maybe earlier, but every week comic books come out on Wednesday. Tractor Beam, my kind of 5-10 minute, 15-minute comic book review comes out on Thursday or Friday, audio only on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. This past week, just one book to look at, High Republic number 2. Had and I went into some thoughts about Jeddah and kyber crystals and oil and things like that, and Jerusalem, etc. Fun random rabbit trail there. This coming week, there's a bunch of books, including Hidden Empire number 1, and so I'll think about what I end up doing, because Joel, you've mentioned you definitely want to talk about that and comment about that. Speaking of which, you and friend of the pod, Doc Holocron, were on his show, on his channel, talking about, speculating about Hidden Empire.
Yep.
Of course, comes out. So Hidden Empire itself, is that already up? Did Doc
Yeah,
already upload that? Okay.
that's already up. I checked. Yeah, that's already
Okay.
up. We talked about it. We're very excited. This is the final of the Kira trilogy.
Yeah,
So
it's so good.
it's heating up. It's heating up.
Yeah, heating up, coming to this epic conclusion. Is she gonna eat it? I don't know. I'm gonna just say that's my expression for so many characters gonna die. Eat it. Other ways to get in touch with us: YouTube memberships here on the Star Wars Underworld YouTube page, super chats on the Underworld YouTube page, and of course the Star Wars Underworld Discord. Joel and I are quite active in there, just chatting away about different things, including the World Cup. If you're curious, chat with me about the World Cup. Also, Discord. That's a week away. That's where my brain's going to be a little bit. So, that's why we're doing all of these deep dives, also because I'm getting involved in work and all that time. So, Joel, thank you so much for kind of taking the lead these last few weeks as I get my gears shifted there. So yeah, those are the plugs. Talking about this week in Star Wars, I'll do my 3 kind of nice, light, quick things, and then if you have a deeper one, you can go for
Yeah,
it. I can see right here, there. I'm not
I
going to
see it.
reach back. I'm not going to try and touch it or anything, because that thing, blood, sweat, and tears. Let's see if I can get it out of the way, though. Well, there
I
goes
mean, I
shaking.
can see it fine. If I can
Yeah,
see it, then
I'm
I
just
think you got
shaking
it.
my computer desk here. Yeah, like the nose, it really is massive in person. It's spectacular. I literally sweat for that thing. I bled for that thing, probably. I had to cheat for that thing. Not really, but I had to tape it up. It's what can I do? It looks fine. I'm
It's
telling the
beautiful.
internet.
The
I used scotch tape to secure some things. Anyway, yeah, I'm enjoying it. It's going to be part of my collection here. Joel, of course, you're right there in Anaheim when I bought it on my phone at toysrus.ca, paid $0 in shipping. That was smart of me. 2 more things. I was able to finally pick up Quest for the Hidden City by George Mann. That's, of course, the young reader novel in phase 2 of the High Republic. And yeah, I'm about 2 chapters into that. Already continuing the grand tradition of these junior novels in High Republic of not writing down to people. I definitely feel like even, and, even though hopefully younger readers can pick this up and follow completely what's going on, I already feel like uh it's also yeah, it's giving me something to chew on. It feels as engaging as any other written story. So it's probably just about younger characters. It's probably the biggest distinction there. So
And not a lot of
that's
big
great.
words.
Yeah, not too many big words. We'll get to big words at the very end of this. But all like big words like Aromatic monasticism, which hopefully the blade. I can't anyway. Yeah, so Quest for the City, and then finally, while I was getting that at Back of Phoenix Books, connected to E.K. Johnson, just in near the University of Toronto. Anyway, I finally picked this guy up, this lady up, by Kristen Baber, who has outdone herself. This should look familiar. Up in the corner, up in the corner. There we go. There we go. There's a connection. Marking really, really beautiful. Just to see this uh in this high resolution. I don't know if you can see this. Like, that's amazing. Anyway, one thing I didn't know. So yesterday I learned as I TIL as I started looking into it. Phil Noto was involved in the concept art for this and for phase one, and I had no idea. I mean, which is odd. I probably should have known. But if anyone who's listening to the Tractor Beam knows, Phil Noto is one of those legendary comic artists who's actually made a career on being a cover artist. We talked about that with Megan Wong a few weeks ago, a month or so ago. Made his name as a comic book cover artist. He does do the art inside the book for, I believe, Han Solo and Chewbacca. No, he does the covers for that. He hasn't really done much inside art, but anyway, he did the concept art for this was part of the team with I believe Ian McCaig and some others who developed the look of phase one of the High Republic, and so that's pretty spectacular to find out. I guess I'm sure that's been around. I'm sure people are watching this been like, what, you didn't know that already, bud? Come on. But anyway, you learn something new every day, and there I learned it. Okay, that's my Our Week in Star Wars. I've spoken a lot. Joel, go for it.
I have two. I have 2 weeks of Star Wars actually that I just thought of. Okay, so my first one is something I talked about on Doc's channel when we did the Hidden Empire speculation, but I wanted to bring it up here because I love this idea and I want to pitch it to everyone. Okay. So at the end of Hidden Empire, Crimson Dawn gets wrecked. Kira's out somehow, dead, just retired. She out of the picture. But here's my pitch. Crimson Dawn comes back. Third time's the charm. But this time, Sabe's in charge of Crimson Dawn. She has taken over Crimson Dawn and she's turned it into an Empire remnant hunting organization. She's going out there and just killing Imperials who all scattered across since the Empire fell. There's my pitch. There's my pitch for post Crimson Dawn stories.
Yeah. Sounds very Charles Soule. I would read that for sure.
Yeah. So there's my pitch week of Star Wars. That's just something that I wanted.
And one thing I'll say to that, it feels like the same thing that I hope they bring up with the Cloud Riders. If they confirm that the Cloud Riders are like this continuation of the Nihil, be like Crimson Dawn being the continuation of Sabe's Crimson Dawn being the continuation of Kira's Crimson Dawn. That would be cool. Anyway.
Second one is a little bit to do with the attachments, and that is our discussion. So on the Jedi Council forums, there's been an interesting discussion going on with an old idea that Lucas was toying with when he was still making that Star Wars Underworld show of giving Palpatine more of a definitive backstory. I don't know how much you've heard about this. Like apparently there was like a woman involved and Palpatine was gonna get like his heart crushed or something, and that turned him to the dark side. That's sort of the story. I don't know how much of it's true. It doesn't sound that great. It sounds a little sexist, kind of like, oh, great, like Palpatine's the evil jerky because he got his heart broken. Right. That's great. That's how you do it.
Sounds a little bit like Anakin.
But it does give that kind of question of like, the whole, can there be characters in Star Wars who are just, they don't need trauma. They were just evil. They just are evil people. Like, someone compared Palpatine. Palpatine's a little Joffrey Baratheon, he just nothing really traumatic about his parentage. He's just a psycho kid who grew up into a psycho old man with wizard powers. It's like do we have to give depth and nuance to every villain? I mean, Maul's got tragedy, Anakin's got tragedy, Ben Solo's got tragedy. Palpatine, though, can't he just be, Marcion Rowe got some tragedy, got some depth in, but does everyone need it? Can't Palpatine just be the evil? Even like in
Mhm.
that, like it's like, and then we got into like religious discussion. Like even the
Sure.
devil was technically fallen angel, and there's a lot of stuff with Satan in terms of like the westernization and stuff like that. I don't want to get into that. It'll be here all
Mhm.
day. And even I don't know
Theology
that.
time with Joel and Doc.
Yeah, I know. But
Yeah,
it's sort of an interesting discussion, and I don't know. What do you think, as you spoke from your theological perspective, and just Star Wars?
yeah.
Like, do you need to give Palpatine the depths needed, or can he just be, what? He was just an evil psycho omen kid, you know?
I mean, I think what we got in Legends with Darth Plagueis, the Darth Plagueis novel, that's the extent of it we need, and
Yeah.
it's pretty rich, right?
Mhm.
But we catch up with him. We meet him when he's, I guess, in his maybe 20s, and he just kills his family because a Sith has to commit an atrocity to join the dark side. But and so he just does. But he's hated his family his whole life, and yeah, there that's a good point. I mean, one thing I know, I would like to ask someone who an expert in psychopathy, because that, I mean, and in the morality, the ethics of psychopathy, because it's a very fascinating thing, because they aren't actually capable of, like, they're, from what I understand, what that is that their brains aren't actually capable of the type of attachments that, there's the term attachment, the things in our brain that cause us to treat others with respect, cause us to treat others
Right.
with compassion and care, because we understand that we're all in this together, in this human community thing.
Aren't
This
licensed psychologists, people, just so you know.
I know, yeah. So like I want to, like, I'd be curious to know. I mean, what they think, and if they have a more nuanced perspective on it. I know, like, things like uh traumatic births, like brain damage at birth can cause things like that. um you know yeah, you talk about mass murderers, and not brainwashed mass murderers who get brainwashed later. I mean, like, these kids who grow up just violent. Yeah, so that seems to be like that. And what the ethics of that are, like, what their state of personhood is, and what the ethics of treating them like that. um I don't know, like, I don't think they deserve to be chucked down a tube, and, but um they should be stopped in the action,
Right.
the harm they're doing to others. So that's interesting. And then, of course, I mean, yeah, you may chuck down the tube. um yeah, that's the thing with Lucifer. So here's a theologian. Do we have a thing here? Here we go. uh yeah, I mean, the thing with Lucifer and the angelic beings, it's almost, I mean, I believe it's literal in a sense, but it's almost just what it matters for us, in that there are servants of God and enemies of God.
Mhm.
And, in angelic beings, and just the extension of God's sovereignty throughout the universe, in a
Right.
way. I mean, the Star Wars equivalent is there's the Force, and then there's the dark side.
Right.
That's kind of the way I see things. And so,
Mhm.
Lucifer says, "Screw you, God. I'm going to actually just go do my own thing." And so that's the thing, is humans have this more of this choice, are given more of a
Mhm.
choice. So yeah, it's an interesting question. The short answer is, yeah. I mean, he's certainly more in that irredeemable Lucifer, Satan
Right.
category. But psychology, there's this interesting psychological train. Are psychopaths redeemable? Are they curable? That
No,
is a similar question.
no, and I think you're right. I think Palpatine is, for take out the theology to go real world
Mm.
perspective. In the real world perspective is psychologically a sociopath.
Yeah,
And nothing wrong with, and obviously you can't, if you're born like that, you can't help yourself. Like you are
right.
the kid who likes to pull the wings off of flies. Um, parents have to deal with that in whatever way they do.
Hmm.
Through medicines and stuff like that. Obviously Palpatine probably didn't have the best parents either way, but like they probably also
True.
he was also probably at least in Plagueis spoiled kid who, rich and then he just met a
Hmm.
dark master and got superpowers and then oh gosh, we're all
Yeah.
screwed. But even other characters like
Yeah.
there's a great video. I think I've shared it with you about like how Anakin is
Hmm.
very much someone with like not bipolar, like personality some sort of
Yeah.
personality disorder
Yeah. Oh,
where
yeah. Is it bipolar personality? No, it's not called that. Anyway, I know
but
what you
yeah,
mean.
and it's a great video by actual licensed therapist.
Hmm.
Um, like that doesn't mean Anakin Skywalker, and people with mental disability don't become supervillains. Uh, but I do think it's like looking at real world, borderline personality disorder. That's Anakin's. That's what they kind of diagnosed Anakin with.
Hmm.
Um, you know, it's true. Obviously it's heightened because these people have superpowers, but it's just sort of interesting. It's like I
Hmm.
do think if real world sociopaths do exist without trauma, without kind of like Anakin had a sympathetic life,
Hmm.
like then I think you can't have your Palpatines who like no, they were just born kind of without that
Yeah.
ability, and unfortunately, they got even into worse crowds and got wizard powers. So
Yeah.
I just
There's that.
interesting look.
I mean, two things to say there is, in the real world, my guess is the psychiatrist would tell me there's actually a range, and there is, uh nothing static, and the human brain isn't static. We know that it's
Right.
neuroplastic is the technical term for it, I believe. So there's that, and there's a range of levels of psychopathy, and some can actually be managed and uh enable functioning. Palpatine, to me, maybe the most important thing to say about him is that he fulfills a narrative function.
Oh yeah.
um and that's not, well, that is to reduce him a little bit. Maybe that's why Rise of Skywalker, maybe there's a bit of a disappointment that when he comes back again, didn't his narrative function was already concluded? And we can debate that or not, but yeah, it's an interesting question. Yeah, my answer is yeah. The Either way, whether or not he comes back in episode 9, that narrative function is the most important aspect for Anakin, for all three, right? For Anakin, and then Vader, for Luke, and for Rey. He's the foil against which they react, and then they make the choice: am I going to take up this weapon and strike you down? Am I going to plot to over 20 years and try and incorporate my son into that plot? Or am I going to chuck the saber, say I'm a Jedi like my father before me, or I'm going to, take the saber and defend,
Hmm.
but turn your evil back on you? And then that's the true heroism, the true service to the light. So, yeah, maybe, I mean, at least that's where my mind goes with
Yeah,
Palpatine,
he can be
but it
evil.
doesn't
He
quite
doesn't have.
answer the question.
No, I think it does. I think he can be evil. You don't
Yeah.
have to make him
Mhm.
nuanced or
Yeah.
deep or or have redeeming qualities. He can
Yeah.
just you know what Palpatine's just evil.
It's a great
He just
question. Um,
uh
they
yeah.
need to find a way to make Darth Plagueis canon again somehow. I don't know. Like, we keep referring back to it. It's still so good. I don't know. Maybe do a version of it. Take that story, take whatever is laid down in there. I don't know. I mean, that's the thing about Legends and canon. It's canon until it's not.
Yeah.
It's kind of how it works. Anyway, speaking of canon, Andor season episode 10, season 1, episode 10, that is canon. Finally we get the prison break. Finally we get the you get them overrun. One of the great all-time Star Wars acting performances in Andy Serkis. It just completely
Hmm.
blew my mind. He was great as Snoke, especially in the Last Jedi. Well, yeah, primary in the Last Jedi. Man, Emmys, pay attention. This was one of the great
Oh yeah.
performances. Yeah,
Oh yeah. And Andy Serkis and Stellan Skarsgård. They're the goats. Man, they're the giving those speeches and
Mhm.
Just dang, what an episode! Like, just so satisfying watching them escape. It's like one way out, one like yes, like
Mhm.
loving it. I just oh, what an episode! Just
Yeah.
like I did a whole an hour long thing on it, Doctor Channel, so you can hear my deeper thoughts there. But it's like,
Mhm.
yeah, it's just this arc really great, and I think the final two episodes getting ready for something big to happen on Ferrix. Uh oh, and hi Hannah on in the chat room. Uh, so
Yeah. Just
uh
maybe I'll give my thoughts there just
yeah.
as I'm recollecting them. Yeah, that just the symbolism of it. I mean, very much went for the art film feel, kind of THX 1138. The feel of being imprisoned and having to fight the the panopticon of the imperial machine, uh and the way societies and the way institutions imprison people just in these cycles, even capitalist imprisonment, in these cycles of production and consumption, and then you go to sleep. And um because we don't know what they're making. And we've discussed back and forth, people discuss back and forth. I almost want them to be making nothing in particular. I want them to be, and that's kind of the point. I think Alex Damon was mentioning that. The kind of the point is they're just there because the thing they're fueling is the uh
Machine.
just the empire's identity, repressive identity, more
Right.
than anything else. Maybe they are making something useful. Why would you waste resources on that? But
Hmm.
um to see that, and then to see, yeah, it was very much 1138 th 1138 esque
Oh
to
yeah.
see Andor's personhood and Kino's personhood really reassert itself in that episode. And yeah, it was just it was the most different Star Wars I've ever seen, I think, too, which again is saying something. But um
Right. Oh yeah.
definitely gone with, yeah, the art film thing. I mean, which is to say, going all the way back to the origins of Star Wars and the art film,
Mhm.
um depth, and the way it was shot, and all this classic stuff that isn't blockbuster, isn't the candy popularity, which I love. The candy popularity, I should mention, I saw Black Panther on the weekend. That was fun. The Wakanda Forever, that was also depth within the candy. This sheds the candy, and so I'm here for it too.
I have two things I wanted to bring up. I remembered one thing I brought up in the with conversation with Doc, but I actually thought about it here. Kind of deals with this is I would be completely okay if we never saw Luthen outside of the show. Um,
Mhm.
because not because I don't like connections and stuff like that. I mean, I love it. That's why we're here.
Sure.
That's why we have a podcast. But there's something about Luthen's character and the story in particular that I feel like just should be just for this show and should never be mentioned in anything else. Because like yeah, that's the best example. But you ever think of like World War II movie? Then you have like the big World War II movie that show at like kind of the grand screen. You know the characters. FDR, Churchill, Stalin, Hitler, Mussolini, all Rommel, Patton, all them, Zhukov, all those guys. Luthen's none of them. Luthen is that person you'll never hear of because they were the spy who had to be off the books, who had to do the things that needed to be done. And once they were done, they were done. You never heard from them again, or they were dead. Or something you just never heard from them again. So I think if you kind of look at Star Wars in that sort of historical kind of gaze sometimes, which goes back and forth between mythology. It's like if the great events of the Galactic Civil War in your history books. You got Luke, Leia, Han, fight Vader, and the Emperor. The big stuff, the big stories. Luthen is the guy you never hear of because he doesn't exist, but he did an important thing, and he's only going to be in this one story because that's the story that matters. And once he's done, he's done. You don't need to know anything else. He either going to die or he's just going to vanish. So I kind of
Yeah.
am thinking of like I kind of think it'd be powerful if he's just in the series and nothing else.
I mean, here's a question: Do we see him die on screen? As I dealt with my last year, do we see him die on screen? Does he eat it, or even that he just disappears I mean that speech, that amazing speech on
Mhm.
the in probably in on level 1313. I mean, he's dead already. He's traded his soul to the devil so everyone else can the devil so everyone else can go to heaven. It's kind of this. He's made this moral sacrifice.
Mhm.
I mean, yeah. Also, another thing is he has to be off the books because that's a PR hit for the rebellion. If they see him and Saw, I mean, that's why Saw and Mon Mothma go have are at odds in part because Mon is also about what is this going to look like? How's this going to play on the HoloNet?
Well, it's
Someone
interesting,
like
Saul still
Luthen,
gets mentioned even in the future. Saul still has a bit of a legacy. Luthen's, like,
yeah, but
completely
one that
just
Mon Mothma isn't happy about. So, uh, yeah, and so yeah, with Luthen, yeah, I mean, I that would be interesting. That would a really great story choice. I don't know if they ever do that. Um, Obviously, we he's not in Rogue One. Obviously, he's not in Rebels. He's not in anything else. So maybe why not?
I don't
Again,
know.
he's dead already in his own eyes. So yeah,
The second thing is, don't forget to catch Andor on ABC on Thanksgiving. It's gonna be on TV. Exciting. Very
that's
exciting.
right. American
Mhm.
Broadcast Channel on American Thanksgiving. All
I
right.
know.
I forgot about that. On the days before Black Friday, is that what that is? Yeah, yeah.
Guess
That
so,
that
yeah.
is interesting. That's an interesting choice. That's the first time they've done that, right? Like
I
anything
think
with Disney
so.
Plus. Yeah. I mean, other than being all about the dollars, what do you think they did that?
I think, well, apart from the dollars and getting them subscriptions, I think it's to get people. I think Andor's got the best chance of getting people who probably wouldn't have cared to get Disney Plus or Star Wars into getting Disney Plus. Adults, people who watch high drama.
Hmm.
I think it's such a different type of Star Wars, and it's the first two. So it's like, if you want to know what happened to the third one, get that Disney Plus because that's where you get the crescendo. So
Yeah.
to the first arc. So it's kind of a
Hmm.
marketing move, and I hope it works. I think it will. So
Yeah, that's true. If you want to hear me make that argument, join our Discord.
yeah,
It was yeah, I mean, it's weird to say, but in some ways, Andor's the most accessible show to adult audiences because it's not trading in space wizards. It's got a bit of senators, but we understand what that senator is doing. Like, I mean, we've got the House of Cards influence there. So, yeah, it's an interesting choice. It really signals what this show is about, what Lucasfilm hopes for this show, hopes what it does,
critically
and making
acclaimed.
yeah critically acclaimed and making inroads into like you were saying audiences that aren't commonly gonna like us are folks who aren't gonna seek out and get Disney Plus subscriptions 2 years ago today at night. It was 2 years ago last night, pretty sure, and nerd out for an hour and a half or whatever on the minutia of Space Wizards and the Galactic Senate and all that, but they want to find a deep spy thriller that also touches on political themes. Here's your show. So, yeah, putting it in front of people, that's always great.
I'll be
So,
very curious to see what kind of awards Andor is nominated for. I feel like, every Star Wars show gets nominated for best visual effects or something like that. Like this, I could see like best script writer, best performing actor. Like I could see Andor actually getting
yeah,
into the big leagues of shows.
I mean, both Stellan Skarsgård and Andy Serkis have to get Emmy supporting actor nods. They have
I
to. They
Yeah.
better. I mean, it would just so ridiculous if they didn't. I don't know. Anyway, just like Letitia Wright for Black Panther should get for Wakanda Forever should get an Oscar nom for Best Actor or Best Actress. Just
Mhm.
the usual divide with the mainstream and the us geeky corner here. I mean, Andor is a show that's my point, and that's your point. Also made up mention on the Discord that you brought up is Andor is a show that bridges that divide and bursts through that divide. So yeah, let's hope they're paying attention. Okay, speaking of paying attention, Joel, why don't you kick this off talking about attachments in Star Wars?
Yes, attachments in Star Wars probably one of the biggest thematic elements of Star Wars since, well, really, I guess Return of the Empire Strikes Back, a little bit of Return of the Jedi. I mean, I guess you could. I can't really see it in A New Hope that much, at least a little bit.
Maybe
And then
Luke
obviously
with
the
his
prequels,
uncle, Luke with Uncle on Emperor a little bit.
a little bit. I
Yeah.
think it's a little heavier in Empire. And
Yeah.
then obviously the prequels. That's Anakin's whole struggle.
Hmm.
Really, and what and not as much in the sequels. A little bit. I mean, I guess attachments with family, um,
Hmm.
and stuff like that. But it's definitely a theme that's always been there. That's in regard with our main kind of hero characters of the Jedi. Um, I guess the question has always been, and I've always felt there's been like a divide between how fans perceive what attachments to Star Wars are about and what Lucas himself has talked about. And I actually have a really good um there was a good Tumblr blog called Writer Buddha on Tumblr, who had a bunch of quotes from George Lucas from 1999 to 2021 about attachments. And I picked one out at random, but I thought it was a good one, so I'm going to read a little bit about it and let's see where it goes. Mr. Lucas himself, I'm actually not sure when he said this, but here we go.
Do the
I'm
accent.
not
No, don't do the accent.
as long as you love other, I can't do the whole one.
No.
As long as you love other people and treat them kindly, you won't be afraid. Dot dot dot. Jedi aren't supposed to have attachments. They can love people, they can do that, but they can't attach. That's the problem in the world of fear. Once you attach to something, then you become afraid of losing it, and then when you are afraid of losing it, you turn to the dark side and you want to hold on to it, and that's what Anakin issue ultimately that he wanted to hold on to his wife, who he knew he had premonition that she was going to die. Dot dot dot. Probably skip some stuff.
Mhm.
When do you do that and you're afraid and you're on the dark side and you fall the golden path of compassion because you are greedy? You want to hold
Mhm.
on to something that you love, and he didn't do the right thing, and as a result, he turned bad.
Mhm.
Um, I do think that's sort of maybe one of the biggest things about the discourse about attachment is people conflate love and attachment. And I've noticed that over the years.
Mhm.
I do think Lucas is very much pro this Jedi shouldn't have attachments thing. Like I don't think that's ever been the lesson of Star Wars. At least that's in his words.
Mhm.
I'm kind of curious, Matthew. What are your kind of thoughts on like why do you think the discourse kind of comes down to like do you think people conflate love and
Yeah.
attachment and what Lucas is trying to say? Maybe where wires get
Mhm.
crossed.
Yeah, Roger. Well, first I want to point out a very fascinating point here. Um, if you have too much attachment, you fall off the golden path of compassion, right? Where we, and this is to partly answer your question. And what I was saying before is, uh, we express compassion through attachments, and we think we often do. And I think what George is speaking to specifically to here is more specific than that, right? He's speaking specifically to the fear of loss. He's
Mhm,
speaking specifically to an identity so firmly rooted in, um yeah, especially, I mean, we're especially talking about romantic attachments, which is still a place where wires get crossed, right? But
mhm,
an identity so firmly rooted in, uh this is the person I'm with, the Facebook thing, in a relationship with, but only with one person, because you can't have any other kind of relationship, and that's a gendered point too, right? And the idea that men can only have any kind of intimacy or closeness with the woman they're with. They're talking about straight men specifically, whereas women, yeah, are able to have more broader relationships. That's a false gender binary that is not true. But to say, yeah, part of what the wires getting crossed there is, we look at the space wizards, the space monks. We see, I mean, and this is what I've gotten at before is a lot of what our perceptions of the Jedi are through this lens of whatever our lens of Western Christianity, Western Christian tradition is. It's just simply kind of the first thing that comes to mind for all of us, for a lot of us, I should say. For me, it's a positive thing because, I'm in it. Well, for me, it's an ambiguous thing, but primarily a positive thing. For other people, it's maybe more neutral. For other people, it's negative thing. They automatically assume that just because here's a celibate community, they assume that they're repressed, because there's also connections to maybe their upbringing and how they were taught about, sex in Catholic school, and um, seeing the hypocrisy of, possibly seeing the hypocrisy of that, or being told to repress their feelings and their identities, and that gets mapped onto this what we see on the film on screen about, again, here's a celibate community, or celibate, supposedly celibate-ish, um that they're allowed
Saudi
to.
movie is the exception.
Yeah,
It's a
well, Rail Averos is an exception, right?
true.
In Master and Apprentice, and yeah, I mean Elzar in High Republic. We'll get to High Republic in a bit, and the High Republic is actually really interesting about all this. But yeah, it's, and so I mean, I'll I'll jump ahead and say, here's kind of my rant. Is, again, to me, this whole thing about attachments equals religious repression. That what was my rant? It's, I think it's this presumption on the part of, no, I will say it's probably inspired by it. Certainly the stigma around, Anakin fathering a child, and how that makes Padme so nervous.
Mhm.
That is connected. That is a part of the story, and I'm not going to deny that that's a part of the story. But to say, to deny wholesale that the Jedi are this evil repressive institution, even by the late Republic, because of this one rule, and I think it is taking it too far. And which is saying, this is my rant. Is this comes from thinking about Cyril Karn confronting Deidre Miro in front of the ISB, and yeah, go back I guess it was a few weeks ago, maybe last week. I talked about how, yeah, I mean, there's different possibilities there. She's either she rejects him because she's not interested, and she's just there to do her job, and she's trying to be respected as a professional. Also, Cyril's super creepy. I mean, that's not denying that at all. But is there a part of her that maybe wants some sort of connection, some sort of intimacy romantically with somebody, and she can't have it because she's in the Empire, because the Empire commands absolute loyalty to the Empire? It is the repressive institution that people don't seem to be cluing into when it comes to attachments. I want to hear more about the Empire being coded for homophobia. I'm just thinking about this now, but that's the system that says you cannot be with who you want to be with. That is the system in Star Wars that says you can't have feelings. Feelings are evil, and intrinsically disordered. That's the institution that says that, and we see it because, again, Mira isn't really able to be there. We have the two Inquisitors, one of which we're getting a novel about. Vader, Vader sets it's this brutal scene where Vader in the Force just sets them on each other, because just to teach them a lesson. That again, I think part of that is my rant almost done. Part of that is we accept that the Empire is evil, and so we just not think about it too much, and so we're just, okay, fine, they're evil, narrative function. What's kind of interesting or cool about them, people prefer to focus on that. That's fair enough. But the Jedi are not the most romantically repressed institution in Star Wars. That's kind of my point. And again, with the High Republic, it's even more interesting. So yeah, that's my long answer to why wires get crossed there.
I guess
I
then.
mean, I guess one last thing is there something to be said for, well, I think a few things. I mean, part of it is it just a symptom of an over sexualized culture, where, again, we think that is what connections are always. And also, it's okay to, we have lots of stories of the disaster, so and so, the disaster blank, and I don't want to tread on queer stories in that context. But I mean, I called Afra our favorite disaster lesbian. She calls herself that. But I mean, the thing about Afra though is her learning that just because she has feelings and wants to go and get stuff doesn't actually give her license to engage in disastrous behavior, and that actually can be a stereotype if it wasn't Alyssa Wong writing that story. So, um, you know, uh, yeah, I think again, like everything, George Lucas was trying to get more nuance, and we just don't quite. I mean, I'm trying to do it here right now, but uh, we struggle with nuance. Is maybe the shortest of shortest answers.
I guess my question is then, why can't Anakin be married and have a kid? Why if Mace Windu like met a nice guy? Like, yeah, I'm Mr. Windu. If
Mm,
Elzar met a nice girl, little
yeah.
Mrs. Elzar. Like, why can't Jedi? I mean, obviously, outside of not everything has to be about sex or anything, but it's like, you know,
Hmm.
I don't know why the whole don't marry thing. And this is sort of where I think there is such a thing as toxic selflessness. Um, it's like
Hmm.
you give too much of yourself. It's like you're not given to yourself. Our generation millennials very much
True.
about self care, and you should be allowed to want thing. A little selfishness isn't a bad thing.
Hmm.
Um, and I look at Kanan as sort of the greatest example of this. I think Kanan is just as much a Jedi as any other Jedi, and he's been space married. He and Hera are space married, and at the end of the day, he's not because he's a good husband because he's not like overly attached. He made the sacrifice for his
Hmm.
family. So I don't know. I think there is a way where Anakin is long he's not selfishly attached to his Padme, which he was, and that's the whole toxic relationship right there. I don't think there's anything wrong with
Hmm.
Anakin being married. Even in Legends, Luke got married. A bunch of his Jedi were allowed to marry and have families. So I think there's in this if the Jedi are based off of samurai were married. That's the whole
Hmm.
point. Samurai goes home and to his
Right.
farm and his land, his lord's land with his servants. So I do think there is something to be said about this whole Jedi can't wed and have families thing. That maybe they went a little too far in one direction for whatever reason. So I don't know. I think there's also a problem with that as well, just regardless of sexualized culture. I think there
Hmm.
is something to be said about maybe the Jedi are too selfless, and I think
Yeah.
some individuality is worth it.
So it's interesting. I mean, and you bring up all the bring up Kanan, you bring up I mean, who else? I mean, I've brought up Elzar and Rael, right? I mean the whole thing, tricky thing with say Elzar and Avar. Um, Elzar wants to rekindle something. This is Light of the Jedi. Elzar wants to kind of rekindle something. He's kind of drunk. he drunk
Bit.
kisses her. It's awkward. I mean, she's a professional. She wants to be taken serious as the leader of the Marshall Starlight Beacon at that point. Um, so I think one of the things we can make a distinction then is between the Jedi as this longer tradition and longer even just an approach to the Force, like a spirituality, and the Jedi Order as not just an institution in the abstract, but actual people in the galaxy, the real fictional, real galaxy.
Right.
Um, and my point there, Kanan to me is actually kind of the proof in the pudding in that the idea of monastic celibacy, all interestingly enough, the way they'll say it is that they have attachments. They have an attachment to their community, and it's a non-sexual one. It's an attachment. It's their family, and and Star Wars is all about found family in that way. And you see that even I think with Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon, you see that a little bit. You see that among the Padawans, eh, or at least in the late Republic, but even the High Republic a little bit. You see that, sure. You see that on the council a little bit. You see that um, with Obi-Wan and Anakin, right?
Yeah.
They are family, and so you see it with Ahsoka and Anakin, right? There's
Right.
the family bond there. Um, for Anakin to get married, maybe Yeah,
I mean,
it's
I
hard
have
to
problems with
describe.
it because Anakin and Padme are already kind of a toxic relationship, but in the
True.
the gray, in kind of like the neutral sense of the word.
So, I mean, it's interesting. Just for a number of centuries, well, I mean, formally in the tradition of, uh, of monasticism, the idea is you're either uh, married and you have a family, and that's connected to it traditionally, right? Is the traditional heterosexual thing of having kids and continuing the species in that way. But even then, of having just a domestic life with your partner, um,
Hmm.
that was seen as um, mutually, what's the word, mutually exclusive to having a monastic life that is meant to be sort of more heavenly. At least the theology or the belief went. Now we don't fully accept that, right? We believe that, but we believe that both, Christians, Western Christians now believe that both marriage and monastic communities are, and Catholics. This is official Catholic teaching. I would, I mean, I'm not Catholic myself, but I would say that they're both heavenly lives. It's just they're still different, and one is more one. I mean, because here's the thing: is you take a vow of celibacy, you also take a vow of poverty, and the vow of poverty means that you share all your possessions and your resources in common with the whole wider community for the rest of your life. Now, here's the counterpoint to that: is there are now communities, especially in the 21st century, in cities who have sprung up, Christian communities of married people, of single people. I mean, the thing is that the level of attachment is different between your couple and the rest of your community. And the idea of being in a church community or in any other community, it's still like that. But yeah, there's still a sense of mutual opposition. So maybe this is the point. Maybe this is what I'm getting to. Kind of ranting here is, until Order 66, there was a wide enough community. There should have been, and this is part of the point, there should have been the type of relational supports that would be provided, like you're saying, not being too selfless, that should have provided Anakin and Ahsoka and whoever else with the emotional, psychological, relational support that they wouldn't need to go. Anakin wouldn't need to go seek it with Padme. Um, Maybe they did, maybe they didn't, and that's part of the fall. You see, Ahsoka should have had the Jedi Council should have had her back at her trial. Instead, they put her on trial because she's trying to be. They're trying to kowtow to the Republic and the Senate and to the Chancellor. Uh, I think I think we see that in the High Republic. I think we see, and this is where I do want to get to this. We see it a lot more complicated. We see it a lot more nuanced.
Hmm.
In that, first of all, Padawans are actually free to explore their feelings for each other, for whoever. Um, they're even free. There's one, is it Comic Vitus? They full up and leave. I think it's not Comic. Might be someone else. Full up and leave for a little bit as a Padawan. One of Yoda's Padawans ups and leaves for a little bit to pursue this fling with this circus guy. and then they come back and they actually they not Keeve, Lula. They rescue Lula Talasola on Naboo, and, and that's this new attachment that comes into their life and they take her as a Padawan, and it's this beautiful transition back into the celibate monastic life, but in one that is driven by genuine attachment and compassion. So yeah, I mean, you even have Lula and Zine later on. I mean, they actually full on drop the L word. They're in love as Padawans. So yeah, I mean that's the thing, and there's still that relational support. So I mean that's one of the things I love about the High Republic. Of all the young adult characters, which are I think the main characters of Phase One, are definitely more layered in that way.
I guess then why can't you have that relational support, but also Who was the one that Elzar was trying to hit on Elzar again?
Avar.
Who got Avar? So what if
Yeah,
like Avar and Elzar decide, you know what? I want to share a bed with you. I want to wake up with you every day and
yeah,
make the official thing, and but still be the marshal of the starlight. Like you
yeah.
can have a career and a man to come to, or a partner to come back to at the nighttime. We can have it
Good
all. I
question.
think a career. So I don't see why that should be a problem as well. I think that should be allowed if they want it.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder if it's a worldview thing, a little bit, in that maybe we are in our culture just a lot more flexible about that. Um, but I mean, but we have uh, monks and nuns and whatnot who, yeah, I mean, it's here's the thing, and here's part of it, I guess, is it's a relational support, but the council needs to be free to up and order Avar to go and to do this thing, right? Like if she had a partner on Coruscant, but then the council just up said, no, we need you to be the Marshal of Starlight Beacon. That would create this tug, for example, create this tug on her and on her soul, if you will. So that's kind of what the thinking is. I hear you. I think there are ways to figure it out. But if for centuries that's what gets built into that idea gets built into it, the way it has in the real world, that no, you aren't concerned with raising a family and building property and building to pass on to your inheritance or whatever. um you're going off and you're going to pray and you're going to make great beer and that's your entire life. You're going to be your entire life, and become a priest and maybe a bishop one day, if that's where you're called to serve. um then you can't. Yeah, it's the thing is it was considered incompatible, the two. And so maybe that's part of it too, is um marital attachment had all these other material things incorporated into it, whereas in our more comfortable affluent middle class existence they aren't. I mean, that's certainly part of the fact that sexuality and procreation aren't as connected anymore. The technology allows that, right? The economics allow that. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying it's something that maybe we need to attend to as being more particular to our context, or at least if we want to understand people who may think otherwise. So again, I do see what you're saying. um I think they'd have to. Well, it'll be interesting if they really explored the origins of all that. Like explored why they, like, why, for in seriously, and I think High Republic is the space to do it.
Oh yes.
Why they're considered incompatible from a Jedi perspective, from the Force in Star Wars, or just full on Borrow from Saint Benedict of Nursia, if you want.
I mean, here's a weird outside of Star Wars example. Maybe not the best one. What's the one I'm thinking about? I watched The Crown on Netflix.
Yeah.
And one of the big story parts is, and one of the things that always kind of kills the royal family is royals can't remarry divorced people. And that's kind of one of the big kind of things. Like, morality is changing. Like people are getting divorced every day. And, good on them. It's like
Mm-hmm.
that the royals can't, and it just destroys them. The system destroys them. That's
Right.
the whole,
And that was a church thing too, right? It's in the Church of England they couldn't be.
well, the queen is the head of the Church of England, so
Yeah, exactly.
same thing. So
Yeah.
it's that flexibility kind of thing, or the non-flexibility that kind of that kind of causes the problems. And I wonder if that's again the Jedi problem, is that they started becoming so unflexible
Hmm.
that that did lead to their ultimate demise, among other reasons. Because
Yeah, I mean, well, I'm compassionate.
but you,
I mean, I think about with Anakin and Padme. The answer there is, I think Anakin would have to leave the Order, but he might not have. He wouldn't have to stop serving the light. He could still. I mean, he'd be able to keep his lightsaber and um, be an ally to the Jedi, but he may not be able to be institutionally part of it. and because he wouldn't be free to just up and go wherever, and that is part of the tension. Um, but yeah, I mean that's the problem. I mean the thing is the stigma, right? The fact that you know Obi-Wan knew, Obi-Wan fully knew. He knew from day one, pretty much, and he could have helped. He could have actually, and he wouldn't have judged them. But uh, Mace Windu would have, and everyone else would have. Yoda
Right.
might have. Yoda does in a way. The whole just let go. Don't worry
Right.
about it. Just let go of the pat answer, which he definitely regrets later in life. Um, yeah, that's part of the tragedy. Is the stigma really really caused the breaking of attachments and loss of compassion and loss of supports in those contexts.
I mean, yeah, I mean, that's one of the reasons why, Qui-Gon was a better master for Anakin. I think he could have been a lot more flexible with these sorts of things and kind of
Mhm.
helped Anakin find a more healthier outlet to his
Yeah,
problems. And then, you got Palpatine's kind of the only one who's like actually showing a little bit of compassion, and then Anakin's like totally gonna go for it.
yeah. But it played right
Um,
into his hand. The power to save your wife from certain
yeah,
death. I'll
exactly.
embrace her too. I'll welcome her too. She's my
I
predecessor in the Senate anyway. So
I don't know why Padme thinks she's gonna get fired from the Senate because she gets married. I mean, come on, Bale's got kids, and well, if she's gonna get a kid, and
yeah.
married, like, that's the one thing. Like, what, senators can't get married? Senators are
So
pretty
no,
normal.
yeah. Well, I mean, Perrin and I mean, talk about weird. No, not weird. Like traditions that seem strange to us, right? And the arranged marriages on Chandrilla, right? Just strange and unusual, but they fit a
They
worldview.
weren't in the 1800s.
Yeah.
Married.
Um. Interestingly, so I heard one of the last times I listened to anything on the Force Center, Joseph Joseph Scrimshaw's Star Wars counseling. He went into all of that, and he had a very interesting thing, and to him, a very interesting answer, and to him, it is related to the stigma that because the Jedi are so respected in the late Republic still, um, the scandal of being someone who basically stole Anakin from the Jedi uh, by marrying him, like that's how it would have played, and it would be such an embarrassment to a very traditionalist monarchy on Naboo, right? Who has this utmost respect for the Jedi, and so I mean that's my answer there. Maybe not. Maybe she might have just continued on the face of it, anyways. Like there's no institutional legal reason. It's just cultural and political.
Right. So we talked a little about the past. Let's talk about the semi-future, and let's
Mhm.
talk about Luke. So he's
Yes.
kind of interesting because I feel like we don't really have a definitive answer for him. Because on the one
Mhm.
hand, he was training Leia when she was clearly pregnant. So like he wasn't gonna, like, Luke wasn't gonna go to Leia's like, okay, give me a job. We gotta divorce Han. Okay. No,
True.
it's like, no, like Luke was never gonna do that. Luke was never gonna, like, Luke loves Leia, and obviously they're brother and sister, so you have
Mhm.
that attachment there. Um, oh, we got another person from Australia named Ken. Hello, Ken. Um, so there's that. Obviously we have the Grogu situation, and you know, Luke, I think, actually did handle that actually quite well.
Mhm.
Ooh, do some carpentry, Ken. Interesting. Sorry, I just see some
Yeah, all
interesting
good.
comments. Like, I wanted to
Yeah.
carpentry. Um, um, but obviously, I think Luke did handle that well by just like saying, "Hey, you can go back to Din because I know you're kind of not in the headspace for this." And I think he made the right choice. And I like to think that when Grogu is ready, Luke will gladly help him. I think he's like, "Come, Grogu, you get me. Screw you, screw you, Grogu." I don't think Luke is that petty. And then in Shadows of the Sith, we obviously have Luke trying to be more the traditional Jedi Master with Ben Solo, and kind of somewhat thinking, "Am I really doing the right thing here by like not embrace kind of being too detached and like, hey, we're uncle and nephew, we are family." And you could
Mhm.
probably say maybe he was right because obviously, Ben Solo, for a variety of reasons we still don't 100% know, did go to Snoke and felt comfort in Snoke
Mhm.
in that. Anakin way. So it's just kind of interesting where Luke might take this attachment, kind of no attachment ordeal, or was trying to take it with his order. And I feel like he was trying to balance the two things, and it didn't quite work out as well as he hoped.
Yeah, that's a
Granted,
good question. Sorry.
time. Granted, his order didn't have much time to exist before it
True.
exploded, so who knows?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. I mean, and you bring up, I mean, training Leia, who's pregnant with Ben, and then training Ben. Um, yeah, I mean, I was surprised at how traditionalist, for lack of a better term, Luke is in this, in Shadow of the Sith. And I mean, even in Book of Boba Fett in that episode, but especially in Shadow of the Sith, I was surprised because again we have this example of Kanan, who um, once the order is gone, the institution's gone, the family is gone. Yeah, he goes crew is his family. How Luke, I mean, he has his biological family because Anakin and Padme, but that it continues. He has this possibility of attachments, and yet um, he shows Ben this coldness. I mean, part of it, I guess, he doesn't want to have much favoritism, show too much favoritism, but also, yeah, I mean, he could have leaned into it by doing something different and doing something new, and he doesn't. Maybe that's part of what he regrets on Octo. I wonder, and um, because that's the thing. That's the thing. A lot of people speculate with Ray going out into the unknown regions or whatever it is she's up to, building a newer community. Is she going to relax that rule? What's she going to do with that rule? The last guy she's kissed is Ben,
Yeah.
who's dead. So, but for other people who want that kind of connection, I mean, I'm all Fin Po, so go for that. But yeah, that's the thing again with Kanan. Like, I never had a problem with it. Um, if Ray and her order decides to just dispense with that requirement, but it'll be interesting again to see how they navigate the tensions between the two, right? How they navigate. I mean, it'll be probably more like a work-life balance type of situation, but being pulled off in all these different directions. Because here's the thing with Leia, we see how she navigates it. Uh, she goes back to her. She was tempted at least to do this Jedi thing and be off with Luke, but she is pulled back to Han and to Ben and to the Senate, and there is that for her even than any other or in that sense. And so I mean, it'll be interesting to hear more of her story, more of her decision making there. We know, from Princess and the Scoundrel, she wanted Luke back on Chandrilla, right? She wanted Luke to have the type of relationship that the Jedi had with the late Republic and the High Republic, really. Um, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see them deal with it, and not in a facile way, but in a way that navigates the tensions as to why this rule existed in the first place. I mean, part of it is you talk about the corruption of power, of weird space wizard power that Anakin had, and he wanted to use it in a very corrupt way. Not that being celibate is a is a safeguard against that, but it's one of them, right? It enables you to treat everyone fairly and equally in that sense,
I
potentially,
mean,
potentially.
I think
But yeah,
I mean, it's again the selfish versus selfish attachments, and Anakin was selfish with Padme for very toxic ways. Like if
true.
I can't have
Yeah,
Padme, no one can. I probably would love to see Leia as a Jedi just because I don't think she's gonna divorce Han Solo if she wanted. I think
no,
Han. I think she's very much. I mean, I think Han was also very respectful of Leia. Obviously, we've seen a little bit of Princess Council. They both respect each
hmm
other and love each other. And I think,
yeah,
Leia wasn't going to go to the dark side if Han was dying or had a premonition. She wasn't, she just
no,
had,
that's true.
she'd
Yeah,
worry. And, I think they do worry, but, she's like, I
hmm
can't control Han. And Han's gonna Han, but I love him anyway.
yeah,
And we know at the end of the day, we come back together. Well, even though I do my diplomacy and Han does Han stuff,
hmm
like they are. kind of right now the ideal couple in Star Wars in terms of like the big players, even though there's a little bit of less, especially the newer stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I still think that maybe Ray will allow attachment in the sense of like if you Finn Jedi Finn, you got the hot for Poe, you got the hot for Finn. You have my blessing. Go get married and do make
Yeah.
Finn Poe babies. You know, you do that. We have a
I
little
mean,
family
Legends,
and
we had Luke and Mara Jade, right? I mean, there's the
exactly.
Spectre, you know. So
Yeah,
yeah,
they had
like I'd
family.
be good. I'd be good with Ray dispensing of it. If they deal with it, if they deal with the tensions involved, and the
Right.
stresses involved. Um, here's an interesting example. In my church, we have married priests. Almost all the clergy I know are married. Including bishops. All in every like Eastern Orthodox church and Eastern Catholic church, they're primarily married except for monks. And so that's another thing is and that kind of demonstrates it is if you have the communal supports. But even then, like with priests in the Anglican Church of Canada or whatever, with now in the Church of England, which also we also allow divorce and remarriage, which is uh, another conversation. But yeah, but there's also the requirement to have a wider community that to support your marriage and your ministry. And um yeah, maybe that's the thing is by the late Republic, it just it didn't work to be so strict and dogmatic about it. Whereas at an earlier time it may have made more sense. And maybe during the High Republic, again, I think that's where I think they're gonna go into why does this work? Why is this hard? Does this maybe people start to question it? Does it make sense? But then yeah, with the New Republic and beyond, that's the nice exciting thing is Ray and Luke. And Luke, we see him question, like you mentioned in Shadow of the Sith. Ray is free to not and but to also again understand, and it has to be why not? Why are we making this evolution on Jedi tradition?
Right. We got some questions in the chat, so I'm just gonna start pulling them up because I don't like to ignore our chat. We got Sam the Sham. They're also based on Buddhist monks who are celibate. Obviously, Jedi are allowed to love. They could love their communities. Attachments are ego reinforcing. And finally, selfless, meaning there is no I to lose anything. From Ken, we have a question. What do you think about Rail? I think he probably misspelled Rail Awards from probably
Real Averos, yeah.
Rail Averos from Master's Apprentice. He was non-celibate, but argued that you didn't have to be attached to your fun time your partners.
Fun times
Uh,
partner. Friends with benefits.
well, would you like to answer that question, Matthew?
Yeah,
You're quite
that's
interested
my
in
favorite novel
it.
of all Star Wars. It's a great question, and we mentioned Rail a few times in this. Yeah, I think a few things. I think like Elzar, he's supposed to demonstrate kind of the rough outer edge of the Jedi Order and its discipline. Um, yeah, it's a bit of an interesting wrench in the thing, right? In that, uh, a little bit in the sense of it's all good. We don't worry about your programmer. It's typing, all good. We got your meaning, so that's the point. Yeah, on the one hand, yeah, it's an interesting wrinkle of saying, yeah, you can hook up the bar. You're not going to get reprimanded for it. Qui-Gon's going to give you a bit of what are you up to here, bud? Um, you know, how would Dooku feel about this? How would our master feel about this? Uh, but also again, the rough edges. Again, I keep coming back to this. For Rail, his whole arc is about this split loyalty. This is what I'm talking about: split loyalty, split allegiance between um, what's happening on this planet. I forget the name of the planet, and the his mission from the Jedi Order. Now his mission is to be the regent, but he falls in love with the planet, gets attached to the planet and to the ruling authorities of the planet, such that he can't actually see what's happening with the Checker Corporation. I remember Checker Corporation. I don't remember the name of the planet. Go figure. Um, so I kind of think Rail is a little bit meant to be again the exception that proves the rule about it, and just a way of talking about it. The real wrench would be, I think maybe the real wrench is the Padawans of High Republic. where but even then, I don't know, like they haven't really. That's the thing, the Star Wars storytelling, um while the Jedi Order as an institution exists, hasn't actually made explored any sort of actual counter argument to this. I'm really not convinced it has. I think every story we've gotten explores the split loyalties and how it's a problem that can only be lived through by choosing one or the other. And it'd be interesting. It would be problematic for me, but it would be maybe an exciting problematic if they actually told a story of, I mean, shoot, even Quinlan and Ventress. I mean, that's still connected to Quinlan going and joining Dooku. Um, that might have been the exception if they both come back to the Jedi and being able to figure it out.
I
In
guess.
Dooku Jedi Lost, there's another Jedi who actually has a kid, gives birth, gets pregnant, and gives birth, and her son. She takes her son as a Padawan, I think. I think is what happens there, and it's complicated. Maybe that's one of the answers is
I
that.
guess.
You
I
know.
guess my question is like, and gonna go back to what I've been talking about earlier. It's like,
Mhm.
how different is this for people who balance work life and family life? Like,
Yeah,
or like people join the army, they're allowed to get married and have kids. Like, have
it's true.
soldier families. We got priests, obviously. Like, they can do their service to God and
Yeah.
have families. So it's like, I mean, obviously, heightened universe, so the stakes are a lot higher. But it's like,
Hmm.
what stops, Captain Kirk could have got married for Star Trek, nothing, and he got to deal with some big things. He never did, but
Yeah.
Cisco, he was married
Yeah.
and got a kid and kind of balanced work and family life. So
Hmm.
you have to sacrifice that ultimately because of the whole pod race situation. I'm not gonna get into that, but he
Fun
got
times.
married. He got married, so it's like, you know
Yeah.
what I guess what really is stopping them from finding the balance
Mhm.
between both the loyalties to family and the world, and making it work.
Hmm.
I think should be allowed people, or at least having a choice to make it work.
Wasn't there is it not Plo Koon, the droid attack on the Wookiees character? What's his
Oh, that's a
name?
different story because of a population problem.
Yeah, but that's the one exception they found themselves open to. Um, Again, I think there's a more richer storytelling potential afterwards when Ray can actually sit down and look at the past as the past
Right.
and say, okay, does this make sense for us now? Uh,
Right.
why did people think it made sense in the past? And I'll say, we Anglicans, we have priests who are married and families, and priests married to other priests, and whatever. Um, but also, we still have monastic communities where they are celibate, and
Oh yeah.
there we do make that distinction. And so, yeah, Kiadi Mundi, thank you. Um, it's interesting that that's still connected to the material pressures of procreation. So, yeah, I mean, I get your point. I think we're gonna get a better answer. I mean,
Some
with
way.
Luke and with Ray, and I think with Kanan especially, is the best answer we've gotten there. Is
Oh yeah, I
in
think
that
Kanan.
period, you know.
Right. Running low on time, but I do want to
Mhm.
get to this final part, and that is villain attachments and the idea of villains in love and stuff like that. So I'm just gonna lay my cards on the table. I actually do like the idea of villains having normal domestic lives and healthy relationships. Some of that's more from the cartoony superhero supervillain side, where being a supervillain is more like a career choice, than kind of a religious thing. Like, you can
Yeah.
be Lord Destructo, but then come home to the wife and kids, and
Mhm.
there's plenty of shows that actually do that very great. Where it's like, oh, he's a villain, yes, but he actually treats his partner and family quite well. So he's
Mhm.
evil, but in a kind of cartoonish, like, I'm evil for my career, but then in personal life, I'm like a
It's
chill
true.
dude who has a domestic life. So but in terms of Darksiders, obviously, it is in and just the Empire and the Sith and every bad guy.
Mhm.
As we talked about at the beginning, not everyone is a Palpatine. Not everyone is just the sociopath unable to feel empathy.
Mhm.
Not love, because I don't want people could worry that Palpatine's like bad ace representation. I actually don't think so. I think it is just he's not. It's not just romantic love. It's just
Mhm.
empathy and like Palpatine sees someone
Yeah,
fall down and he's gonna laugh because he thinks it's funny. Um, you know,
literally, he cackles.
exactly. You know, enjoy that. You know, I don't think like Palpatine can't feel love. No, he just can't feel just anything, just basic
Yeah.
empathy. Um, but you do wonder, like, not every Sith Lord going back to Legends and we don't really have a lot of Sith Lords in canon right now. Outside of the apprentices of Palpatine, they're not all just psychos and just
Right.
unempathetic beings. They got trauma in their lives. There's a bit more nuance. You got kind of the Revan stuff or the Jason Solo stuff in Legends. I'm doing bad
Mhm.
things for the good of humanity, kind of like a Thanos situation, which
Right.
is just bad, but it's like you're trying to convince yourself you're good. You got Darth Vader, obviously. Maul's kind of like was raised to this way, so he kind of got kind of messed up life. Dooku is more in that I'm doing the bad thing for good
Mhm.
reasons kind of a
Yeah, I
character.
was gonna say that.
I,
Yeah.
um, Especially Tales of the Jedi kind of really helps reinforce that.
Mhm.
Um, I'm kind of curious, like, well, could have they have had love in like I kind of could see a situation where Count Dooku could have maybe fallen in love with a person and kind of and if they definitely agree with his terms, like the two of us together will do bad
Yeah.
things, but we're gonna do it for the good of the galaxy. Um, Situation. I mean, obviously, Vader's love for his son in both the twisted way, but also by the end, the bright way. It's like, hey, this
Yeah.
my son is the only one sticking with me here. He's not leaving me the way everyone else did. So this Emperor guy here, you're gonna kill him. So bye bye, Emperor. Chuck him
Mhm.
off. Um,
Yeah.
I, Maul's kind of lovish. I want a brother, family looking kind of thing, which is built into his trauma. Um, Kind of a situation. And then you know what? I'm gonna be honest. I have seen Imperials kind of like I'm gonna get real world like Nazis where it's like we're all fascist, but like Admiral Yularen. I mean, I don't think they're the Mrs. Yularen as far as I'm concerned, but
Mhm.
honestly, Admiral Yularen seems like the kind of guy like yeah, I could totally see Admiral Yularen having a wife and kids and grandkids and like to his family, he's just a normal grandpa, and then he goes
Mhm.
to work and then orders the massacre of prisoners. Like
Mhm.
that's a lot of terrible governments have people like that where it's like to their families they're just it's dead and then to their job it's like no I'm ordering the execution
Yeah.
of millions with a pen.
That's
um
the vast majority of the Trump administration,
Trump
probably.
Nazis every nuts probably so yeah it's like
Everyone who works at ICE, I'm sure, goes home to their
well, they
their,
have families.
their white picket fence. Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's interesting. You bring up the separation of the two. I mean, what Marvel and DC, for example, have done a great job of is saying these attachments are good, but then there's some sort of torturous thing that happens, and that's to defend their kid or their partner. They actually have to go and do these dark, terrible things. I'm trying to think. I can't think of a story example right now, but I know I've seen that story multiple times. Um, I mean, WandaVision is a little bit like that, kinda. I mean, it's an attachment she makes herself, but um, shoot, Falcon Winter Soldier. What's her name? The who plays Emphas Nest,
Yeah, that person.
Aaron Kellman's character. I mean, I don't even consider her a villain. Never mind. But um,
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, there is that's something that again Marvel has done a better job with sympathetic villains in that way. Um,
Right.
I think Dooku is the closest. Came to that. Dooku leaves the order for a more material attachment. But is still respected by the order until he isn't. So yeah, I mean, yeah, it's something that would be interesting to explore more. I'm trying to think if I'm sure people like Lorna D. Lorna D. I mean, she doesn't like her romantic attachment gets shot, and that kind of sparks her going off on the deep end. But I can see her having doing it as a career. That'd be fun, and having someone on the side. Um, yeah, no, it's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, like again, I think like Lauren's kind of my kind of go to for like, here's a guy I could totally see you not
Mhm.
knowing anything about his career. He just seems like,
Yeah.
oh, it's just he's a cool grandpa. He hangs out with grandkids. He just with the missus. They
Hmm.
probably have a lovely relationship, or the Mister. You never know. You never know
Right.
what your Lauren swing. And then he puts on the ISP uniform and goes like, "We are going to
Yeah.
crack down on these rebels. I've spoken with Emperor Palpatine. Will leave no stone unturned." And
Yeah.
it's like just like we're
Mhm.
gonna go really after them, and then come home. It's like, oh, I would work here. It's fine.
Now I want to see that. I want to see that
Yeah,
because it would be great. I mean, and I think Andor would be the place to show it because it would speak to the disconnect. Be saying, I'm fine with going and murdering hundreds of thousands of spouses and children and whatnot, but I'm only so I can go home and just defend my own. My own can be safe and secure. I mean, that's the appeal of the Death Star, right? A
sure.
safe and secure society because these rebel terrorists are to kill your uh, to kill your partners and kids, and so we've got to defend them, defend you against them by destroying Alderaan.
I,
The twisted warped logic of that I think they could really explore in miniature by yeah. I mean, we see lots of stories in Hollywood overall for Star Wars to go do that. That'd be interesting.
I mean, that's kind of the scary thing is that about the Empire and fascist
Mhm.
regimes in general. It's
Yeah.
like the majority of people who working for those organizations aren't the Tarkins, Palpatines, or Krennics. They are regular people who just have normal desk jobs and lives, and yet they're just the system and their own morality has been just so warped and because evil dominates. Like they can look normal, but then they can sign documents that um, you know condemn bajillions. Um, Switching back to the good guys for a second.
Well, one thing I just wanted to add,
Oh,
one sorry, because I was researching it. That's why I was doing that.
okay.
In Battlefront 2, the story mode, uh, what's her face? I mean,
Iden Versio.
I didn't Versio, but the Admiral and
Yeah,
his
yeah,
wife. I mean, that's a
yeah.
great example. I think
They're
of
divorced.
they're divorced. Okay, but uh, still, they had a family in the Empire, which is again this weird thing that you think you wouldn't be allowed, but they made it work. I mean, I guess they're if you're married before the Empire, then okay, fine. Um, and then then their daughter becomes an elite pilot, an elite crack trooper. Um, they have that attachment that actually serves the Empire, and then of course, I didn't turn spoiler alert, but yeah, I mean, there's the example to get more of their story and what happened there. We got a bit of it in the novel Inferno Squad novel, but yeah, that's a, I mean, because she drew Imperial propaganda as an artist, um,
Uh,
and
I will.
definitely a loyalist there.
I will say there's a bit of an odd kind of thing about the Empire because, like, the Empire doesn't allow marriage. It's like it's not the religious organization. I mean, it is
Right.
ruled by the Sith, but it's like it's like you can work for the Nazis and get married, have Nazi weddings. A lot of the
Yeah,
Nazis had wives. There's a lot. Of,
it is true.
there's always they had kids and gotta have future Nazis. And Trump administration. I mean, you work for the government today. It's not like you work for the government. It's like you can't get married.
Yeah,
It's like you can get married. I mean, some don't, some do. Just
I
personal
wonder if the
lives.
higher ups, like you see that in Lost Stars, for example, how Sienna, I mean, she's goes off even while her Thane and Sienna are in the academy together, they have to be careful because they'll be considered disloyalty. Um, so yeah, I mean, I wonder if maybe because it's an unjust system, so maybe it's arbitrary who gets to if they can figure you can work it out or not. But
There could be
yeah,
sometimes it's like if you're
I don't know.
marrying good imperial stock. Like there's the
Yeah,
whole Tag
maybe that's what it
family. So
is.
General Tag had a family.
Sure.
Um, you know, uh in Legends they really went with the idea that Palpatine had a family, the royal family.
Interesting.
Not much these days, but but yeah, but back to the good guys. Um, it's
Mhm.
interesting. We see Luthen in a weird way is probably the most detached good guy ever. He's
Yeah.
helping the rebellion, and he has no attachment really to anyone. I think he like both in the sense of like he will dump his allies if they become no longer valuable or just become too dangerous. I think he can
Mhm.
even dump someone as loyal as Clea, and Clea probably understands like that's revolution. Just it's part of the job. You gotta shoot me. You
Mhm.
gotta shoot me. Luthen has nobody. In a weird way, Luthen actually is more detached and ruthless than even Saw. Because Saw, at least he's not. He has like he has the community. He has the
Yeah,
partisans.
it's
They
true.
are his. They are his community. He looks out for his community.
And he
Even
had
he still
Stila.
it's Steel, and he had Jin. He
Yeah.
still cares about Jin at the end. So
Mhm.
he kind of has those attachments. And then you got Lucen on the other hand, who's
Mhm.
like. And we were Lucen's going the full Jedi here. Like he has just nobody. Like he has no
Yeah.
community, no attachment. Just it's just him.
And he doesn't care if anyone else does either, right?
Yeah.
Like like Val. I mean, if he knows about Val and blanking on her name,
Shinta.
clearly the ISB officer and his family and his kids. I want to go. Nope, you're still in. You still, you know, you can't run. So
We need heroes, Lonnie.
speaking
Lonnie,
of someone who Imperial who has a family, that's true.
another. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing. There's nothing illegal about marrying. I think it's like unspoken rules of like, well, it depends on who
Yeah,
you marry and stuff like that. Are you?
and especially if you're an Inquisitor under Vader's nose, Vader who Anakin who wasn't allowed to have attachments and fell apart because of it. Have that in your face. I want the novel to explore that. That'd be good.
I think that'd be interesting. I do think there are probably certain areas that like they get a little like no, you got like royal guards probably shouldn't get married. Like your loyalty is to the emperor and the emperor
Yeah,
alone. I think like the higher ups, it's kind of probably. I think they probably can get married if they want, but it's like they're gonna get married to like just trophy wives or
yeah,
ambitious
pretty much.
people as well. So it's like we're rich,
Yeah.
we're powerful, we can do whatever we want.
Mhm.
I guess one more thing. I keep expanding this. Well, don't worry, we'll wrap up. I want to just acknowledge our lovely
Mhm.
chat.
Yeah.
Ken says the Jedi's main failing, in my view, was that their attachments to their dogma/order. This lightsaber is your life. Any response to that? We talked a little
I
about the
mean,
dogma.
it is an odd thing. I mean that gets more into the peace and justice angle. That connected to this weapon is a concern. But I mean, or it's the only way for them to defend themselves is another thing if they go into dangerous situations. But yeah, to make that your life and not the force.
Yeah, it's certainly an interesting question of like, should the Jedi? I mean, if you're willingly, I guess I think I like the idea of like willingly. If you're willingly joining the Jedi Order, then maybe it's okay to kind of have that no marriage rule. It's like what
Yeah.
you're choosing not to get married and have attachments and stuff.
But
So you're
nobody
kind of
willingly joins the order, though. That's the problem.
that's the sort of thing. So it's like I think
Here's where the High Republic complicates this. Okay. Here's
uh,
we got to go
okay,
into more. They
okay.
deliberately throw these Padawans into, or let the Padawans get into situations because it's true. You throw a bunch of teenagers in a pit together, in
Yikes.
not in a pit, in a community together. You know what I mean? And feelings are going to happen. Feelings are going to pop up, and the the masters kind of turn a bit of a blind eye a little bit, at least in phase one. In phase two, there's what's his face in Path of Deceit. I'm blanking on names all the time here. And seriously, like basically falls in love with Marta, and has this really strong attachment to her, and that does end up getting him through it to actually see what's happening, but it ends up probably getting him killed. Um, but yeah, I mean, in phase one, especially, they're allowed to pursue this in the way, actually, interestingly, that Roman Catholic priests I know are actually allowed to, or not priests, like in training, like before they're ordained, they're actually when they're in school. I think they're allowed to explore feelings, and it's a real question of are you going to really commit to this or not. So this is the answer about at least why Avar Chris isn't going to end up wouldn't give in to Elzar, at least in that moment, is because she's been through this already with him, and she came out the other side and committed. Because once you're a knight, then you're committed, then you're in. Um, but while you're a Padawan, you don't actually have to. If you can leave, and I mean, even if you're a knight, you could leave, but there's still a sense of a greater, deeper commitment to it. It's always sad. I mean, even with I mean, I don't know what happens with Keeve. Even with Dooku, it's considered sad that he goes, and they make a bust out of him. But especially as a master, it's a tragedy when he falls to the dark side. It's not considered a tragedy to leave the order. But for a Padawan to leave because they fall in love, I mean, it's not that big of a deal. What they really do explore there, though, especially, I mean, someone Daniel Jose Older with Lula and Zine in Midnight Horizon, really going into this whole thing that George was getting at. We talked about at the beginning of the pressure of the fear of loss that actually pulls them away from the mission that they have to accomplish. And so this tug, this distraction at the back of their mind. And yeah, maybe the unfortunate thing, Joel, that you've been getting at this whole time is it can also be a powerful support and strength, because that's how we know attachments work positively, and why we attach in part. I mean, to give strength to others and to receive that strength as well. Um, but yeah, I mean, especially, I mean, the thing is, Avar and Elzar still have an attachment. It's not sexual. It's I mean, it's professional, but it's definitely more than that still. Um, Elzar clearly wants to get into more, and that's another thing for them to explore in phase 3. I don't know,
I
but
mean, if
yeah,
one wants it and one doesn't, like then he should respect her wishes. That's if they both
yeah, oh
want it, then
sure,
that's great.
yeah,
If both want to do it, then that's their choice, man. That's my belief at least. That does go
yeah,
into the whole thing. I don't want to get dragged this out too far. It's like kind of one thing about Luke again, which I'm kind of curious
mhm,
about, and I'm not quite 100% where it's going. Is um, did Luke do the whole find them as babies, or is he going like, what? It doesn't matter if you're 20, you have force powers, come join. That's kind of where I
yeah,
want Ray to be like. It's sort of like, it doesn't matter if you're a baby. It's like, yeah, you're 20, you want to help, come and join us. And so it's like, there's more of a
mhm,
will, and if they're going with that, then I'm a little bit more willing to have the whole no attachment celibacy thing. It's like they're grown
mhm.
ups. If they don't want to do it, they don't want to do it.
I mean, Luke trained Leia.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I mean, we can get into the whole baby thing another day.
yeah. That's true.
There's some interesting kind of weird connotations. I mean, the
Sure.
family they're willingly giving up the kids, because that's what,
Hmm.
like, it's not like the Jedi are coming. It's like, Obi-Wan, we want this baby named Obi-Wan. We taking them. No, like, no, the
No,
Obi-Wan's parents gave him up willingly, and they were very proud. And, it
and
seems
we
like
we
an
saw
honor.
Ahsoka's parents, right?
Yeah, very excited.
Yeah.
Um, Din obviously, I have to go back to Mandalorian with Din. It was very, it wasn't, it was willingly, but kind of like Din kind of felt like, oh, I can't live with a Force baby, and so it
Yeah.
wasn't a complete detachment, and hence why Grogu decides to go back because he wants to be
True.
with Din. Um, but
Hmm.
yeah, that's just one of those things. But any last minute thoughts on attachments before we wrap it up? Anything we've covered?
I mean, I'll issue this challenge to Star Wars storytellers. Convince me I'm wrong. Tell me a story um, about Jedi who get married. Uh, but and I don't think they will. I think they'll. I don't think they want to. But yeah, definitely tell me a story. Tell me what Ray decides to do. Go back even further in time and tell me what. Not. I mean, we're gonna get what Barash decides to do. Talk about types of monasticism and being a hermit and whatnot. Um, yeah, but yeah, tell me a story that really explores these complexities,
Mhm.
and I'll read it and I'll enjoy it. I mean, the way High Republic Phase One definitely did do that with the Padawans. Yeah, keep
I
that
think
up.
Star Wars Rebels right now is probably the best story for that argument because again, Caden, he's space
Yeah,
married.
yeah,
I've
it's
never,
definitely closest we've gotten.
Yeah, I never read the book New Dawn. I should, because they really imply that, oh yeah, they're space married.
Yeah, well, does it? I mean, I think he kind of has a sloppy crush on her, and yeah, she isn't going for it. That's what I read in New Dawn, but because he's a lot less mature by that point. So
That's true. So yeah,
yeah,
I mean, I think Jedi should allowed to be married and they can still do their thing. I would love to
point
have that.
counterpoint. That's what we were doing tonight. We did a point counterpoint. That was interesting.
But yeah, so
A little bit.
see where it goes. But
Yeah.
all right, I think that's it for the discussion. I can't think of anything else, but this was a fun one.
Yeah, it was a fun one, and yeah, definitely enjoy these deep dives the last few weeks. Again, as I, we will get into covering books as I actually end up reading the books, and definitely Hidden Empire as that goes on. But yeah, I mean, getting back to our roots here at Ion Canada, about these deep dive discussions going for an hour talking about attachments and celibacy and all that stuff. So again, Joel, thanks for leading that, for getting that all together. Where can they find you on the internet?
Well, you can still find me on Twitter because I'm still there at JID2021. Again, JID2021.
Right, and you can find me on Twitter at NEUG485, Instagram at MNEUG1138. Again, thanks for everyone for watching. I'm gonna highlight this one. Thank you for joining us. I definitely appreciate it. If you, I'll click that off. That'll be weird. Yeah. So yeah, give us a follow on Twitter and Instagram there. If you haven't subscribed to the Star Wars Underworld YouTube channel, please do so. Yeah, also give us a follow on social media, Ion Canon on Twitch as well. If you liked what you heard, if you didn't like what you heard, if you thought one of us was just out of our mind, let us know in the comments below. Please do. Let us
Especially
know.
for
Let
this
us know.
topic.
Especially this
This is
topic, which gets at some pretty kind of heady, controversial things. Yeah, let us know. Let us know on social media, Twitter or Instagram. If you want in the Discord, again, let us know. Is the link active, or should we ask them to DM?
I think we have to ask the DM. So
Yeah,
DM Ben,
like
Ben.
either comment on Twitter or whatever, or just send us a DM. We'll send you a minty fresh link to the Discord server there. Yeah, and then follow us again on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Tractor Beam should be coming out Thursday or Friday, and then definitely more Hidden Empire conversation after that. You can follow me again on Twitter, NEG45. I got there already. Also, yes, follow at the SW. I should mention that. The flagship, the network. Lots of conversations there. Okay. Next week, we're continuing another deep dive. We're going into what Joel mentioned before. Here's some big words for you. Authorial custodianship of characters. And if you want to know what those words mean, either check a dictionary or etymology, or come right back here on Ion Canon next Monday night, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern. But until then, Joel, let us blow this thing and head home.